Well, we have a severe weather threat along the edge of the heat dome and a cold front out east, and the tropics are active as Hurricane Lee becomes a Category 5. So we do have a couple areas of slight risk today in the South, Texas, Louisiana, and then in the Northeast. Both of these are on the edge of some heat here. This is the edge of the heat dome that's been creating really havoc and record-breaking temperatures the last couple of weeks. It has kind of retreated to the south, but also we've got a cold front moving through the Northeast. And both of these are mainly high wind threats today. Can always see some hail or an isolated tornado, but we're looking at the possibility primarily of some of these downburst severe wind gusts that can be, of course, damaging. So the center of the heat dome is in the southwest. It had expanded, of course, over the Labor Day weekend across much of the central U.S., creating a lot of heat. It has retreated, and on the edge of the heat dome, we do have a little bit of activity potentially. And then on the edge of a cool front that has made its way to the east coast too. So two areas, these are mid-level winds, about 10, 15,000 feet up. We've got two little jets here at that level that are pushing dry air into these possible thunderstorm clusters that do develop, and those are the ingredients for some of these high wind gusts potentially. You get that dry air, a little jet of some wind in the middle of the atmosphere, it hits those storms, and then the rain evaporates into it, and that pushes a cool burst of air to the ground that then kind of spreads out. There will be plenty of energy to develop those storms across Texas and Louisiana today. That's where the heat and humidity is bottled up now. So we'll watch for afternoon and evening storms to develop into clusters and then bow out potentially right along maybe the Gulf Coast and really across Louisiana. We have that potential for some high wind gusts. So this is looking at potential wind gusts here from one of the short-term models here, really kind of moving across southern Arkansas throughout Louisiana into the Gulf. All the yellow and oranges are some of those areas of potential severe wind gusts. Northeast, same thing. A lot of energy ahead of that front. It is hot and humid. This is the same cool front that went through the northern plains earlier in the week, put an end to the heat wave there. And storms are going to fire right along that front here. And again, any of those storms could produce some of these severe downburst wind gusts. Doesn't look as impressive when we look at the wind gust swath compared to what we're expecting in Louisiana, but there are going to be some isolated severe wind gusts potentially in parts of upstate New York, maybe even near New York City and into Massachusetts today. And the big thing that we're watching too in the Atlantic is two tropical systems. Hurricane Lee, which is a Category 5 storm now, and Tropical Storm Margot, which is expected to become a hurricane. So the Atlantic, despite it being an El Nino year, has been pretty active just because the waters are so hot in the Atlantic and the Gulf. So again, Hurricane Lee, sustained winds expected to get close to 180 miles an hour today. So that's a strong Category 5 storm. Margot is expected to become a hurricane here over the weekend. This is largely going to stay out in the Atlantic, so we're not going to hear much more about Margot. But Lee is something we need to watch because, well, it doesn't look like it's going to make a U.S. landfall. It's going to get very close. So there are going to be impacts potentially in the east and maybe some of the islands here in the Caribbean and the Atlantic, but expected to become a Category 5, expected to become stronger today even, near 180 mile per hour sustained winds. Gusts are going to be over 200 miles an hour, pretty incredible. And this is looking at spaghetti plots, just plotting all the different model scenarios of tracks. You can see most of them do keep Lee out to sea, but when we look longer term, this is the American model as an example, and the European pretty close too. You get those sustained winds in that eye very close to the Northeast. So we're gonna have to watch. At the very least, we're gonna see some swells and impacts from Lee. So that's something we'll watch into next week.